Welcome to this edition of the Flipper Guy, and this is a multi-purpose video. Some of you are here to learn about how to take off a timing cover without having to remove the whole top and bottom and everything on the engine. Can be done. As we work through our 08 Flip, this is why it's so critical that you need to drive the Flip, the vehicle, before you sell it. So we have a new timing system in here. I've done this a million times. We have new lash adjusters or lifters, depending on what you want to call them. So, you know, somewhere down along the line, we've got a Taco Bell armchair expert who knows everything about engines. We have new roller followers. We have new cam. We have new timing set. I've gone through and did an in-frame on the crank, new bearings. We're all set. And then we took it for a drive. And it was going, you got that? So this is a rare issue. I found about out of the big Google search engine. I did find a handful of people ran into this problem, and one thing that they all shared, nobody figured it out. But I just did. I know exactly what the problem is. Let's go take this apart. Look, I need your help. Your help now more than ever. I need to reach 1,102 subscribers. Now, just so you're aware, subscribing doesn't cost you anything, no money whatsoever. It's the only thing I ask in participation in these really informative, great, and hopefully sometimes funny videos. Please subscribe. Okay, we want to remove the power steering drive, and that you're going to need this right here. OEM is sold in most popular stores. That is going to be OEM puller installer kit 27031. So we remove this pulley. Don't drop it on the floor. So this is how this works right here. Then you put your wrench on here, and then you turn this in, and that'll pull this off. So that'll give you the gist of what's going on here. And this right here was for the power steering. Next, we have to remove the crank bolt. That is going to be a number 18. Now, this is a crank bolt. These are torque to yield, meaning that they're one-time use. Anytime you take these off, you need to order a brand new one. If these come loose, especially on a timing chain system, then you're going to end up having drift, and the timing chain is going to come off, or you're going to cause damage within the front of the engine. These have to be brand new and torqued properly. You just go on Google for any engine that you're working on, and it will give you the torque yield for these. Some of them you tighten them down to 30 foot-pounds and turn 90 degrees. Some of them you torque immediately to like 89 foot-pounds, and then they're good to go. Everything has their own torque value. Torque value is critical. Every bolt needs to be torqued to its proper value. So if you don't have a torque wrench and you want to get into this, you gotta get a good quality torque wrench. Next we got to go through and physically pull off with a puller that bottom crank. This is how that looks like. Now you'll see the hole right here is obviously larger, so what you're always going to have is a spare bolt, or go out and buy a grade 2 bolt with the same type of threads, in this case metric. Screw that in. So this center piece, that center piece right there, be pushing on the bolt itself. Okay, we got 4 bolts on the water pump pulley. These are number 10s. Then real carefully, you don't want to bend this, all right? There's some things that are very easy to bend. There, we jiggle that off. Then we have 2 serpentine idlers that have to come off. These are number 13s. Now, no matter what type of engine that you're working on, so you remember, mark them. This one right here, top driver's side, so we know it goes over here. This one right here, I'm not going to mark, but for you, if you're doing it the first time, mark it. Top passenger or top right. Then on the power steering unit itself, we've got 1 bolt that is a number 10. Closest to us up on top. So this is what comes out of the power steering pump. Top bolt closest to you, and number 10 that has an adjustable head on it. Works beautiful. If all you have is a regular number 10, it's going to be a little difficult, but you can get it done. But this is the easiest way to do it right here. Then we have 2 connectors up here, 2 sensors. Pull down right here. Pop that off. There's one on the other side. Pop that off. And the same thing holds true here. So you don't forget to plug them back in after it's put back together, no matter what you're working on. Take a piece of tape, wrap it around so you can see, ooh, well, you know, I'm looking at all metal parts and there's a piece of tape right here after you get it put together, and go, oh, well, that's got to be plugged in yet, that way you don't forget. So on the valve covers themselves, in order to get the timing chain cover off, we've got 3 bolts up in front. They're number 8s. Then after they're fully removed from their holding places, their holes, fully unthreaded, go through and then pull them out. 3 per side, total of 6. We don't want to interfere with pulling the timing cover and busting something. Alright, at this stage of the game, on the timing cover, there's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, number 13 bolts. Those all can come out now. Now, if you've not done this before, take yourself a piece of cardboard. Draw a picture of the timing cover and put a little dot where each one of those bolts goes. Take yourself a utility knife, cut a little positive mark, and then push the bolt through so you have a template. When you're done, you'll know where each one of those bolts go there, so you do not put those bolts back in the wrong area. A lot of timing covers have very specific, and engines as a whole have very specific places where that exact length of bolt needs to be. You need to put them back exactly where they were, and also before you put them back in, clean them with a wire brush and some brake clean so they're nice and clean, ready to go back in. Step 1. And 9. Then we have an odd ball that is on the bottom part of the timing cover. And that looks like this. Then we take a number 15. We pull that out. Then on the opposite side, up on top, this is a number 15. Come back with our 18. Now we had a couple things being held on here, so make sure you put the nuts back on exactly the way you removed them. There's a purpose for a nut, and there's a purpose for a nut that has a washer. Yes, there's a technical name for it, but if you're watching this, you probably don't really care. But the point is, put it back together the way you found it. Set it in your little schematic cardboard. Then we're ready to move on to the bottom, so load up your 15. Remove the nut, load up a 22, same thing once again. Let's get these two mated, put back together so they don't get lost. Jump to the opposite side. This side you have a transmission line holder. You have a wire harness holder. Load up your 22 again. Get these two mated back together. Put it with your schematic. Load up your 18. And hit it on the opposite side here at the top of the cover. is going to be that bolt right there. Okay, we've got 4 bolts left. And for as long as I've been doing this, every time, I swear, 1 out of 4, these bolts never get put back in because people forget. Where the oil pan meets the timing cover, there are 4 number 13 bolts. And if you have a 4-wheel drive, they are a real bitch to get out and to get at. Because Ford, is always thinking, would love to have, an engineer here from Ford so I could kick them in the nuts. But either which way, you're going to have to go underneath. This right here is the most optimal wrench for this. Sticks out and then ratchets. You can do it with a regular wrench. It's going to take quite a while, but you can't get anything finagled in there to get a ratchet or anything else that would actually save you time. This is a manual job, so I'm gonna go take those bolts out and we'll be right back. Alright, so I have those 4 pan bolts out. I'll give you a close-up picture of that so you understand what's smelling what I'm selling kind of thing. But anyways, let's get in here with a screwdriver. Now, when you're working on aluminum or timing covers, a little bit of pry. If you find yourself in there going, "No, stop!" You missed a bolt, or you're going to end up busting the aluminum housing, and then you're really going to be SOL'd huge. All right. A little bit of pressure back and forth, just a little pressure back and forth. Work it loose. Be patient. Calm down. So here we go. I'm going to start up over here because there's a little lip. I'm going to come over here, work this a little bit. Okay, set the timing cover down like that. Once again, Ford and their genius engineers, you have your cam position sensor, and they put it in such a way that you actually cannot get at it easily until you get the timing cover off. Grab your gasket. Now, if you're like me, where you just put these gaskets on, they are reusable, okay? But if it's original to the engine, you're 100, 150,000, 200,000 miles plus, these got to be changed. They've seen their life. So anyways, that's all we needed to do to get this timing cover off of here. That's it. Didn't need to remove the whole pump. Didn't need to remove the air conditioner pump. Didn't need to take the valve covers off. It just as simple as I showed you. So I got to take a look here, and I'll be back to see what the grinding issue is. So after I got the timing cover off, what did I find? Well, this took a bit. First thing, even after all the years of working on these engines, there were where the solenoids go into itty bitty tiny little filters. I'm not talking about on the solenoid. I'm talking about a separate filter that sits alongside the solenoids. So I removed those and replaced those. It didn't look like there was any issue, but pulled them on out, put brand new ones in there. Ford OEMs, there's one company that makes these aftermarket, but they had a lead time and I wanted to get this up and running again. So went and spent the big money on the Ford OEM ones, replaced those. I did flush them out, removed the solenoid, removed the filter, flushed it all out with brake clean, filled it back up with oil. So there'd be some lubrication there, and put everything back together. So did I think that was the issue? No. But farting around, what I came to the conclusion is that if you're having this issue, so you have the crank, that's where your pistons hook up to. On the front of that crank, the gear for both timing sets runs through there. Then you have the reluctor wheel that goes on, and then of course you have the timing cover that goes over the top of that, and then you have the harmonic balancer. Ah, all right. What was different from compared to over the years that I did different? Well, normally the bottom gear that's on the crank usually doesn't need to be, well, actually, I've never had to replace one, all right? Even though I've gotten them in the kits, you look at the new one, you look at the old one, the old one doesn't have any wear on it. They don't wear down there. So that is what I started to think about. Now, this went on for over a week as I'm just working this through my head. So I took the old gear, I removed the timing set, took all that off of the crank. I put the old timing gear back on, the reluctor wheel, and then put the harmonic balancer on without the timing cover. And I made a measurement, made sure that it was tight where everything needs to be, and the reluctor wheel was sitting nice and tight. All right. Go back, remove that all, and take the Ford OEM, the brand new gear, slide that on, put the reluctor wheel on, and put the harmonic balancer on. And Lordy B, we found the problem. That new gear set has just a couple thousandths difference on it. Enough for the reluctor wheel to run a little bit sideways, so as it's passing by the chain, it's so close, it's making this whistling, whirling noise. And just enough where it's just barely catching the timing cover. All right, so what did I do to fix that? Now, I could have took the old gear and just slapped that back on, but I thought, well, if everybody else is having this issue, I need to come up with a fix. So what I did was I put the brand new gear on, set the timing all where it needs to be, made sure that the timing gear was set all the way back on the crank. I then took the reluctor wheel, put that back on there, made sure that was tight, and in a rear end gear rebuild, you always end up with these really thin washers, and those washers are to adjust the back of that rear end so it's touching perfectly where it needs to be on the gearing. Well, it just so happens that that fits perfectly on the crank. So I made a measurement of what the difference is when the crank is fully on to where the reluctor wheel is, and I shimmed that up with the exact amount of those shims from a rear end kit. Put it all back together, boom, handled, done, no more issue. And just that little bit, those 3 shims that I put in there to make sure that it was tight, was not enough to throw the belt off. The belt runs just fine. It's not running kitty-wampus or kind of catching. It works absolutely perfect. I made sure I had the measurements before that. So if you've ran into this problem, that is the answer. Either put the old gear back on or go get yourself some rear end shims, the really paper thin ones, and then shim yourself out between the reluctor wheel and the harmonic balancer. Problem solved. So there you have it with this episode of the Flipper Guy, and everybody who came to talk about the, or everybody who came who's seen, so everybody who came here to see about the timing cover and minimal removal, hope you learned something. And everybody else, We're going to be working on the interior next, now that we have the engine running and everything is working the way that it should be. And we'll see you in the next episode of The Flipper Guy.